Amid the shifting tides of a primordial sea, life stirs in forms both strange and fragile, yet the currents of survival are already sharpening teeth and claws. Over 500 million years ago, the Cambrian Explosion ignited a biological arms race, as predators and prey discovered the deadly power of adaptation. Sheltered burrows, armoured shells, and swifter limbs hint at a world on the brink of violence and ingenuity. Every shadow conceals a lesson in survival, every motion a strategy honed by evolution's relentless hand. Step into the Cambrian seas, where every encounter is a test of cunning, strength, and survival. Awakening in the shallows, soft currents stirred over the sea floor, barely disturbing the delicate mats of microbial life that had carpeted the oceans for eons. The waters shimmered with suspended particles, glinting like microscopic jewels under the faint glow of a pale Cambrian sun. Life was abundant yet static, dominated by simple multicellular organisms whose soft bodies left only faint impressions in the sediment. Fossilized impressions from the Ediacaran, dating roughly 570 to 541 million years ago, reveal flat, frond-like creatures such as Dickinsonia, their symmetry hinting at early organization, but lacking the complexity necessary for hunting or fleeing. Clusters of tubular and disc-shaped organisms began appearing in shallow marine environments, their forms suggesting specialization beyond mere survival. Kimberella, for instance, possessed a muscular foot and a primitive feeding apparatus that may have scraped microbial mats from the ocean floor, foreshadowing the potential for active foraging. Fossil measurements indicate that these creatures ranged from just a few millimeters to nearly 10 centimeters in length, small in stature but significant in ecological presence. Sedimentary analysis of Cambrian age strata shows fine laminations interspersed with bioturbation, hinting at the very earliest interactions between organisms and their environment, signs that life was beginning to manipulate rather than merely occupy its habitat. In certain regions, the seafloor was punctuated by enigmatic burrows, shallow depressions, barely penetrating the sediment, yet suggesting purposeful movement. These traces, later formalized as Treptichnus pedum and other ichnofossils, mark the earliest known evidence of sediment displacement by multicellular organisms. The complexity of these burrows, often branching and repetitive, implies coordination and perhaps even a primitive form of decision-making in organisms whose soft bodies left no other evidence. Geochemical analyses of surrounding rock layers show shifts in oxygen isotopes, suggesting that localized oxygenation may have enabled more active lifestyles, providing the energy needed for more sophisticated movement and feeding. Scattered among these early inhabitants were sessile forms, anchored to the substrate with hold-fast structures reminiscent of modern sea pens. These organisms displayed radial and bilateral symmetry, hinting at the evolutionary experimentation that would soon give rise to complex body plans. The mineral composition of their tissues, preserved as pyritized impressions in Burgess shale-type deposits, reveals an early ability to stabilize structures in dynamic water currents, an adaptation that would become crucial for surviving the pressures of predation. Despite their lack of mobility, these creatures were far from passive, demonstrating structural innovations that anticipated the arms and defenses of future Cambrian taxa. Floating above the benthic layers, planktonic organisms contributed to an invisible yet vital layer of ecological interaction. Tiny, multicellular protists with stiffened spicules filtered nutrients from the water, forming a dynamic backdrop for the more visually striking benthic fauna. Isotopic analysis of carbon and nitrogen from fossilized plankton suggests rapid nutrient cycling, evidence that energy flow was becoming more complex even before the appearance of true predators. Microscopic wear patterns on feeding surfaces indicate selective grazing, a subtle precursor to more aggressive predation strategies that would soon redefine the Cambrian seascape. In shallow lagoonal areas, gentle tides sculpted sand ripples that interacted with living mats in surprising ways. Evidence from trace fossils such as Paleodictyon shows early examples of networked feeding patterns, where organisms created intricate, honeycomb-like burrows to optimize nutrient capture. These structures demonstrate that even in an era lacking obvious predators, competition and environmental pressures were driving innovation. The spatial organization of these burrows suggests not only resource partitioning, but also the emergence of behaviors that would later support more sophisticated survival strategies. Tiny cilia and protruding bristles, invisible to the naked eye, hint at the earliest experiments in environmental sensing. These microscopic structures, preserved in exceptionally fine-grained Cambrian deposits, suggest that many organisms were capable of detecting subtle changes in water flow, chemical gradients, or contact with neighboring organisms. Fossils of early lobopodians, for example, displayed tiny sensory appendages along their limbs that may have guided movement or feeding decisions, enabling rudimentary responses to potential threats or sources of nutrition. Analysis of fossilized gut contents indicates selective ingestion of specific microbial mats, implying an ability to discriminate between resource types rather than indiscriminate grazing. These adaptations, though minute, represent a crucial step toward active interaction and, ultimately, predation, revealing how sensory sophistication began quietly shaping the evolutionary landscape before the first true hunters appeared. Unexpectedly, small tubular predators began to emerge, leaving marks that hint at nascent hunting behaviors. Fossils of Parvancorina and other bilaterally symmetrical forms indicate a subtle but crucial development, directional movement and sensory differentiation. The orientation of these fossils, along with associated trace fossils, suggests that some organisms could detect environmental cues and respond to them with deliberate motion. These early sensory capabilities, while primitive, represent the first flickers of what would become complex predation strategies. Chemical analysis of Cambrian sediment layers shows fluctuating oxygen and nutrient levels, likely driving bursts of evolutionary experimentation. Organisms were pressed to adapt structurally and behaviorally, resulting in innovations such as muscularized feeding appendages, rudimentary exoskeletal reinforcement, and even the beginnings of organized group interactions. Fossils preserving these features demonstrate a remarkable diversity of body plans within relatively confined environments, highlighting how selective pressures were already shaping life in ways that foreshadowed the explosive diversification to come. Gradually, the seafloor transformed from a static carpet of simple forms into a subtly dynamic arena where movement, structure, and sensory detection hinted at a coming revolution. Soft-bodied fronds, anchored filter feeders, burrowers, and the first mobile grazers began to coexist in a delicate balance that teetered toward complexity. The innovations visible in these early Cambrian communities, the muscular foot, the radial symmetry, the burrowed pathways, and the proto-sensory structures were all precursors to the lethal arms and appendages of the predators that would soon dominate the oceans. In this quiet yet profound awakening, life was learning the rudiments of agency, manipulation, and response, setting the stage for the sudden emergence of predation as a dominant evolutionary force. The first hunters. Movement stirred across the seafloor, as limbs and grasping appendages began to redefine the rules of engagement. The quiet mats of microbial life, the that once carpeted the shallow Cambrian seas were now punctuated by sudden motion, segmented creatures lunging, probing, and grasping with purpose. Fossil evidence shows that some early arthropods could extend spiny appendages outward in sweeping arcs, capturing prey with speed and precision previously unseen in the oceans. Muscular limbs, reinforced by exoskeletal segments, allowed these pioneers of predation to seize advantage before prey could respond, creating the first true moment of lethal interaction in the evolutionary record. Fossilized remnants of Anomalocaris reveal the astonishing reach and flexibility of early predator limbs. These formidable appendages, often serrated and jointed, could extend several centimeters from the body, suggesting both grasping and tearing capabilities. Paleontologists studying Burgess Shale specimens note that the combination of limb strength and fine motor control allowed Anomalocaris to manipulate soft-bodied prey in ways that left characteristic imprints on surrounding sediment. Such adaptations hint at a level of predatory sophistication that contrasts sharply with the passive scavenging observed in pre-Cambrian ecosystems. Sharp, serrated oral structures hint at the first experiments in cutting and consuming prey. Fossils indicate that Anomalocaris possessed circular mouths lined with overlapping plates, forming a formidable rasping tool capable of puncturing and slicing. Comparative analysis of wear patterns on these plates shows repeated use in capturing soft-bodied organisms, demonstrating that the evolution of specialized feeding structures directly enabled the lethality of these early hunters. Similar adaptations appear in smaller lobopodians, whose tiny, claw-like mouths suggest selective feeding rather than indiscriminate grazing. Traces of strikes and disarticulated exoskeletons testify to the lethal efficiency of emerging hunters. Sites across the Cambrian strata reveal fragmented trilobite carapaces and other exoskeletal remnants that bear scars consistent with attack, often concentrated near sensory or vulnerable areas. These taphonomic patterns provide insight into predation strategies, revealing that hunters targeted weak points rather than simply overpowering prey by brute force. The fossil record preserves these interactions as a silent chronicle of the seafloor's first battlefields, where survival depended on both timing and precision. Bilateral symmetry and segmented limbs allowed for sudden bursts of speed and precision attacks. Fossil reconstructions indicate that many early predators could flex and contract their bodies rhythmically, enabling rapid lunges or retreats. Musculature preserved in exceptional deposits reveals that even small predators possess the capacity for directional movement with accuracy sufficient to pursue fleeing prey. This newfound mobility fundamentally changed the dynamics of life on the seafloor, introducing tension, unpredictability, and high-stakes encounters that were previously absent in static microbial mats. Eyes, some compound and multifaceted, scanned the waters for movement with unprecedented acuity. Trilobites, among the earliest creatures with sophisticated optical systems, displayed thousands of calcite lenses capable of forming a detailed mosaic image of their surroundings. Anomalocaris eyes, preserved in Burgess Shale fossils, were among the largest of any Cambrian animal, suggesting an ability to detect motion across broad angles and long distances. This sensory revolution provided predators with a decisive edge, transforming previously passive seafloor communities into arenas of vigilance, pursuit, and evasion. Small predators exploited stealth and ambush, using the shadows and sediment to their advantage. Evidence from trace fossils indicates that tubular worms and early lobopodians remained partially buried, striking suddenly at unsuspecting prey. Their hunting relied not on size or brute strength, but on timing, coordination, and subtle motion. These behaviors reveal that predation in the Cambrian was diverse, ranging from massive, mobile hunters to small, opportunistic specialists, each driving evolutionary pressures in complementary ways. Evidence from gut contents and coprolites shows selective feeding, not random consumption, indicating behavioral sophistication. Analysis of fossilized gut remains in arthropods demonstrates that predators preferred soft-bodied organisms over mineralized prey, highlighting dietary specialization even at this early stage. Coprolite studies further suggest repeated prey selection, implying learning or innate preference for specific prey types. Such findings indicate that predation was not a blunt evolutionary force, but a nuanced interaction shaping the behavior, morphology, and survival strategies of multiple species simultaneously. Predator-prey encounters left marks in the substrate, frozen in time as a record of life and death struggle. Burrow disturbances, scratches, and small depressions indicate pursuit paths, defensive retreats, and ambush strategies. These interactions are preserved in exceptional detail in Lagerstätten such as the Chengjiang and Burgess shale deposits, providing a rare glimpse into the choreography of early predation. Sedimentology studies suggest that even subtle water currents influenced hunting efficiency, emphasizing the interplay between environment and emergent predatory behavior. Environmental pressures, from oxygen fluctuations to nutrient density, shaped the evolution of hunting strategies. Geochemical analyses show localized oxygenation in shallow marine zones, which would have supported higher metabolic rates and active movement. Meanwhile, nutrient-rich sediments created hotspots of prey concentration, incentivizing targeted hunting behaviors. Together, these environmental conditions accelerated evolutionary experimentation, producing predators capable of rapid adaptation and innovation in their pursuit of survival. Interactions between hunters and grazers began structuring early food webs, creating dynamic ecological hierarchies. The fossil record reveals overlapping habitats where multiple predator species coexisted with diverse prey assemblages. These interactions laid the foundation for trophic stratification, with specialized predators, generalist hunters, and passive grazers all occupying unique ecological niches. Such an organization demonstrates that predation was not an isolated phenomenon, but a driving force shaping the structure and diversity of Cambrian ecosystems. The emergence of these predators forced immediate evolutionary responses, from mobility to protective features. Fossilized exoskeletons in trilobites and other prey species show signs of thickening, spines, and reinforced segments, direct adaptations to the new threat landscape. Simultaneously, predators refined their appendages, eyes, and feeding structures, creating a feedback loop of escalating evolutionary innovation. This interplay marks the true beginning of a biological arms race, where each adaptation could determine survival or death. Patterns of injury and repair in fossils suggest early adaptive feedback, where prey learned from predation. Some trilobite exoskeletons bear scars that show partial regrowth, implying that individuals survived attacks and adapted structurally over their lifetimes. Such evidence indicates that the Cambrian seafloor was not only a stage for immediate predation, but also a laboratory for evolutionary experimentation, where survival left visible, lasting traces. Each successful strike, each narrowly avoided attack, reshaped the seafloor, compelling prey to innovate or face extinction. The sudden advent of hunters transformed the oceans into arenas of urgency and peril, where the evolution of limbs, jaws, and sensory organs became matters of life and death. In these early confrontations, the foundations of modern predator-prey dynamics were established, setting in motion an evolutionary narrative that would intensify with every passing million years and lay the groundwork for the explosive arms race that defines the Cambrian Explosion. Armor and weaponry. Shells glinted faintly beneath the Cambrian sunlight, revealing the first serious challenge to predation. In shallow shelves and protected basins, mineralized plates and rigid carapaces began to appear across multiple lineages, a phenomenon preserved in Lagerstätten, such as Chengjiang and the Burgess Shale, where soft tissues and armored outlines survive together. These deposits show that mineralized armor was not a single invention, but a suite of convergent solutions, appearing roughly at the start of the Cambrian, around 541 million years ago, as animals experimented with hard parts to resist the newly lethal bites and grasps of hunters. Exoskeletons, reinforced with mineral deposits, provided both structure and protection against grasping appendages. Many early arthropods developed an external cuticle strengthened by calcium salts and organic matrices, producing segmented carapaces that served a dual role as load-bearing framework and defensive shield. These exoskeletons permitted greater leverage for limb muscles, while simultaneously presenting a barrier to the raptorial limbs and serrated mouths described in the previous chapter. Spines and ridges projected outward, creating natural barriers that complicated the hunter's approach. Fossils show a wide variety of spine morphologies, elongated dorsolateral spines in some trilobites, hooked lateral barbs in certain hyoliths, and stout marginal spines on sessile forms, each altering the mechanics of capture by increasing the effective radius of the organism and directing predatory strikes away from vulnerable soft tissue. Trilobite fossils show variation in carapace thickness, evidence of selective pressures imposed by predators. Comparative measurements across Cambrian strata indicate that carapace thickness could vary by orders of magnitude within and between species, with some populations exhibiting thicker laminae in horizons where the abundance of large predators is greater, suggesting rapid, localized evolutionary responses rather than slow, uniform change. Some brachiopods developed layered shells, combining flexibility with durability in an early engineering feat of evolution. Microstructure analysis of phosphatic brachiopod valves reveals alternating, organic-rich layers and mineralized lamellae that could dissipate impact energy, a construction analogous to composite materials that engineers study today, and this layering improved survivability when facing blunt force attacks from grasping appendages and crushing implements. Microscopic analysis reveals growth patterns that hint at rapid adaptation to increased predation intensity. Lines of arrested growth and seasonal accretion seen in shell cross-sections indicate periods of accelerated mineral deposition after traumatic injury, implying not only genetic selection for toughness, but also phenotypic plasticity, where individuals could allocate resources to repair and reinforce armor over short timescales. Beneath the visible layers, chemical fortifications silently reinforced the first shells. Analysis of Cambrian exoskeletons reveals the incorporation of trace elements such as magnesium, iron, and strontium, which increased hardness and resistance to fracture without significantly adding weight. Certain trilobites show evidence of localized calcite crystallization patterns, creating microlattices that could deflect or absorb the impact of raptorial limbs. In addition, some brachiopods developed thin organic coatings over their mineralized layers, acting as buffers against abrasion and preventing microcracks from propagating through the shell. These chemical and microstructural innovations demonstrate that armor evolution was not simply a matter of size or thickness. Even at the microscopic level, organisms were experimenting with material science long before humans ever formalized the principles. defensive strategies extended beyond armor. Some species adopted coiling, burrowing, or cryptic behaviors in tandem with physical defenses. Heoliths, for instance, show evidence of partial withdrawal and operculum closure, while certain tubular and conical forms increase their depth within sediment, combining behavioral refuge with mechanical protection in heterogeneous substrates where direct escape was impossible. Bite marks preserved in fossilized exoskeletons testify to repeated attacks. Some survived, many failed. Close inspection of damaged carapaces in museum collections reveals punctures and scored surfaces with healed edges, and in many cases drill-like marks consistent with targeted attempts to access soft tissue. These lesions and subsequent healing scars are direct anatomical records of predation, attempts, and survival. The chemical composition of shells varied, suggesting experimentation in mineralization and material strength across different taxa. While some groups favored calcium carbonate in the form of calcite or aragonite, others precipitated calcium phosphate, and these choices produced different mechanical properties. Carbonate shells often grew faster and larger, while phosphate-based skeletons offered greater hardness per unit thickness, an ecological mosaic of material strategies tuned to local conditions and predator types. Patterns of spine placement and curvature appear optimized to thwart specific predators, revealing an arms race already underway. In many trilobite species, the orientation of spines corresponds with common attack vectors inferred from associated predator fossils: anterior-facing hooks to deter frontal grabs, posterior arrays to complicate flanking strikes, and ventral ridges that make extraction by suction or pulling mechanically difficult, all of which imply selective sculpting of morphology by predation regimes. Spatial distribution of armored prey hints at ecological refuges and clustering as strategies against hunters. Mapping of fossil assemblages shows that heavily armored taxa often cluster in patchy environments, reefal outcrops, shell beds, and vegetated seafloor analogues, where a combination of structural complexity and group presence reduced individual predation risk and created microhabitats that favored continued diversification of defensive traits. Evidence of repair in damaged exoskeletons shows that survival was an active, ongoing negotiation between attacker and defender. Microscopic regrowth lines, calcified calluses, and regenerated spines indicate not only that some individuals endured attacks, but that such survival fed evolutionary feedback, allowing survivors to reproduce and pass on traits that incrementally increase toughness, while also supplying predators with selection pressure to overcome those very defenses. Every adaptation observed in these fossils represents not just survival, but the pressure to drive predators into innovation themselves. As shells thickened, spines proliferated, and composite valves evolved, predatory species were confronted with diminishing returns from their existing strategies, compelling modifications in grasping morphology, bite mechanics, and attack behaviors. This interplay of defensive sophistication made clear that the Cambrian seafloor had entered an open-ended contest in which predators must innovate further, triggering a relentless arms race that would accelerate both offense and defense in equal measure. Eyes that hunt. Light pierced the shallow waters, and with it came the possibility of seeing and being seen. The Cambrian seafloor, once a realm of tactile and chemical interactions, transformed as visual perception emerged as a dominant sensory tool. Predators could now anticipate prey movements, discern subtle contrasts between organisms and substrate, and exploit environmental patterns that were previously invisible. Fossils from the Burgess Shale and Chengjiang deposits reveal that even modestly sized arthropods possessed compound eyes capable of detecting motion with startling precision, suggesting that sight rapidly became a critical factor in survival and predation. Compound eyes, composed of hundreds or thousands of lenses, transformed the predator's perception of the seafloor. Each ommatidium acted as an individual photoreceptive unit, capturing a narrow portion of the visual field while contributing to a composite mosaic image. The density and arrangement of these lenses allowed predators to detect rapid movements across a wide field of view, giving them a decisive advantage over prey still relying on tactile or chemical cues alone. In some cases, densely packed ommatidia suggest acute sensitivity to light gradients, enabling early predators to hunt in dim or murky waters with remarkable accuracy. In anomalocaris specimens, fossilized eyes display remarkable size and orientation, indicating panoramic vision. These eyes, sometimes as large as a human thumb, were positioned on stalks or lateral margins of the head, providing an almost uninterrupted 360-degree field of view. Such placement would have enabled early predators to monitor multiple prey simultaneously or track evasive targets while maintaining awareness of competitors and potential threats, underscoring the evolutionary advantage of sophisticated visual anatomy. Lens microstructure suggests sensitivity to motion, contrast, and even polarized light in some taxa. Microscopic examinations of calcite lenses in trilobites reveal curvature and facet orientation, optimized for detecting rapid shifts in brightness and angle, a crucial adaptation for identifying prey movement against textured seafloor backgrounds. Polarization detection, inferred from lens micro-patterning, may have enhanced contrast in aquatic environments, allowing predators to distinguish organisms from reflections or glare, further refining hunting precision. Predators could now detect prey from distances previously unimaginable, anticipating movement before it happened. Trace fossils demonstrate sudden lunges and directional strikes, consistent with visual cues guiding predatory behavior. The precision and timing evident in these fossilized attacks suggests that sight allowed predators to calculate trajectories, strike with efficiency, and exploit microhabitats where prey had once assumed safety, altering the very geometry of predation. The position of eyes along the body enabled stereoscopic depth perception, critical for calculating attack trajectories. In trilobites and early arthropods, paired lateral eyes formed overlapping visual fields, allowing spatial judgment of distance and relative motion. This binocular integration would have been crucial for accurately intercepting prey or avoiding obstacles, particularly in complex reef-like structures or densely packed microbial mats, highlighting how anatomy directly influenced behavioral success. Some early arthropods evolved movable eye stalks, granting flexibility in scanning while remaining stationary. Stalked eyes allowed predators to pivot their gaze independently of body orientation, enabling them to remain concealed within burrows, behind rocks, or under sediment while tracking prey. Fossil evidence shows variation in stalk length and articulation, suggesting species-specific adaptations to habitat complexity and predation style, and illustrating how visual mobility contributed to tactical versatility. Neurological reconstructions imply that visual input was integrated rapidly, allowing split-second decisions in pursuit and capture. Though soft tissue is rarely preserved, brain case morphology and optic nerve impressions suggest significant neural investment in visual processing. Early arthropods appear to have evolved specialized neuropils capable of rapidly integrating multiple visual streams, coordinating limb movement with environmental feedback and executing calculated strikes with remarkable speed. The complexity of the eye appears to correlate with predation, linking optical sophistication directly to hunting success. Stratigraphic layers rich in highly visual predators coincide with increased occurrences of injured or fragmented prey exoskeletons. These correlations imply that the evolution of complex eyes directly influenced ecosystem dynamics, creating feedback loops where prey, armor, evasion, and cryptic behavior intensified in response to enhanced predator perception. Compound eyes also allowed predators to navigate complex reef-like environments with precision. Fossilized trackways and burrow evidence suggest that predators actively maneuvered around obstacles, negotiating vertical relief, crevices, and uneven substrates while tracking targets. Visual acuity facilitated exploration of new habitats, expanding predatory reach and increasing ecological pressure on prey populations, ultimately reshaping seafloor community structure. The emergence of sight catalyzed behavioral innovations in predators, from ambush to pursuit strategies. Previously, static ambush predators could now monitor multiple pathways simultaneously, adjusting timing and angle of attack. Pursuit hunters could calculate escape trajectories, anticipate evasive maneuvers, and optimize approach velocity, all guided by sophisticated optical input. Vision transformed predation from opportunistic contact to calculated engagement, fundamentally altering the evolutionary landscape. Prey species, in turn, developed visual camouflage, rapid withdrawal, or evasive spiraling movements in response. Some trilobites exhibit dorsal patterning, likely serving as countershading, while soft-bodied organisms appear to have adjusted swimming behaviors to reduce visual detectability. The selective pressure imposed by visual predators created a cascading series of adaptations in prey morphology, behavior, and even habitat selection, demonstrating the co-evolutionary dialogue driven by sight. Evolutionary pressure intensified as visual acuity drove specialization in both hunters and prey, accelerating the arms race. Fossil assemblages show rapid diversification of eye morphology in lineages experiencing intense predation, alongside corresponding innovations in prey defensive traits. The Cambrian seafloor became a theatre of optical and structural strategy, where vision dictated who would survive and who would fall, reshaping ecological interactions in fundamental ways. With sight, attacks became strategic, calculated, and deadly, permanently altering the balance of life on the Cambrian seafloor. Predators that could see not only gained the ability to locate prey, but also to anticipate, calculate, and execute strikes with precision, forcing prey to innovate defenses, behaviors, and habitats in response. In this new world of observation and action, vision was no longer a passive sense but a weapon, a tool of survival that elevated predation into deliberate strategy, setting the stage for the next evolutionary innovations in mobility, speed, and cooperative hunting that would define life's relentless arms race. The surge of speed. Currents rippled across the Cambrian seafloor, challenging every organism to move faster or perish. The quiet, calculated interactions of sight and attack that had dominated earlier predator-prey dynamics were now intensified by locomotion. Organisms that could accelerate quickly or navigate obstacles with agility gained decisive advantages, transforming the seafloor into a stage of rapid, kinetic interplay. Fossil evidence suggests that even modest bursts of movement could determine survival, forcing both hunters and prey to refine the mechanics of mobility over millions of years. Jointed limbs and flexible body segments allowed early arthropods to accelerate with unprecedented agility. The articulation of exoskeletal segments permitted coordinated limb motion, distributing force efficiently along the body and enabling swift, controlled propulsion. Trilobites, for example, could tuck and extend their appendages, producing a combination of crawling and swimming movements that allowed them to respond instantly to threats or opportunities in their environment. Tail flaps and paddle-like appendages generated propulsion, enabling rapid pursuit and evasive maneuvers. Fossilized evidence shows lateral flaps in early arthropods and hyoliths that functioned like modern fins, creating lift and thrust in both horizontal and vertical planes. Such adaptations not only increased speed, but also allowed sudden directional changes, essential for both predatory strikes and escape behaviors. Fossilized trackways reveal bursts of movement, suggesting sudden chases and evasive retreats. Impressions in fine-grained sediments from Cambrian sites indicate patterns of acceleration and rapid directional shifts, demonstrating that some organisms could achieve quick, calculated sprints. These physical traces provide a rare window into the behavior of long-extinct species, showing that speed was as much about strategy and precision as raw velocity. Streamlined body forms reduced drag, permitting longer, faster swimming while conserving energy. Flattened and tapered exoskeletons, smooth dorsal surfaces, and minimized appendage protrusion decreased resistance, allowing sustained movement over greater distances. Such designs were particularly advantageous in open, shallow seas, where predation risk was high and energy efficiency could dictate reproductive success. Beyond shape, the structure of limbs and flaps dictated bursts of acceleration and agile turns. Examinations of Cambrian fossils reveal paddle-like endopods, paired flaps, and lateral extensions specifically adapted for fine-tuned control in 3 dimensions. Variations in flap curvature, segment number, and articulation suggest that certain species could generate both forward thrust and lateral maneuvering without sacrificing speed. Preserved limb impressions reveal asymmetric flapping patterns, likely enabling sudden twists, spirals, or evasive arcs that would surprise predators or outpace prey. Such specialized appendages highlight that evolutionary innovation was not limited to body streamlining. Control surfaces were essential in shaping the predator-prey arms race, allowing complex movement strategies previously unseen in the fossil record. Musculature reconstructions indicate coordinated flexion and extension patterns, optimizing thrust and maneuverability. Analyses of preserved limb attachment sites and muscle scars reveal how rapid contractions could be synchronized to produce alternating strokes, bursts of acceleration, or sudden stops. This coordination allowed predators to anticipate evasive prey and maintain control during high-speed chases. Predators leverage speed in combination with vision, calculating trajectories mid-pursuit with remarkable precision. The integration of visual acuity and locomotive ability enabled dynamic hunting strategies where predators could approach from multiple angles, adjust course on the fly, and execute attacks with accuracy. The interplay of sensory input and movement amplified predatory effectiveness, raising the stakes for prey species to evolve equally rapid responses. Some prey evolved countermeasures, from sudden spirals to erratic bursts, exploiting predator reaction times. Certain trilobites and soft-bodied organisms could twist their bodies or undulate laterally, creating unpredictable movement paths. These behaviors, combined with shell protection or cryptic coloration, allowed prey to exploit the delay inherent in predator decision-making, demonstrating that survival depended on both speed and behavioral ingenuity. Burrowing and substrate skimming allowed species to escape quickly into protective terrain. Organisms capable of rapid downward motion into sediment or skimming along its surface could avoid visual detection and physical attacks. Fossilized burrows and trackways show that these behaviors were widespread, revealing that mobility extended beyond open water chases and into complex habitat navigation. The interplay of speed, agility, and maneuverability produced a dynamic, evolutionary feedback loop between hunters and prey. Predators that could accelerate faster or execute precise directional changes forced prey into higher levels of performance, selecting for swifter escape responses and more efficient energy use. Over time, this co-evolution intensified selective pressure, driving the diversification of both predatory and defensive morphologies. Differences in fin and flap orientation point to species-specific adaptations for maneuvering both vertically and horizontally. Some arthropods appear optimized for rapid vertical bursts, others for lateral sweeps, reflecting ecological specialization within habitats and the need to exploit or evade specific threats. These adaptations highlight how early Cambrian ecosystems were structured around movement patterns as much as morphology. Energy-efficient locomotion became a critical survival trait, driving diversification in both active predators and evasive prey. Species that combined speed with economy of effort could forage farther, escape more successfully, and reproduce more effectively. Fossil analyses suggest that energy-conserving locomotor adaptations appeared in tandem with other evolutionary innovations, such as vision and armor, creating multifaceted survival strategies. Rapid movement altered ecological structures, enabling colonization of new niches and reshaping food webs. Mobile predators could exploit previously inaccessible prey populations, while fast-moving prey could escape local predators and occupy refuges, creating a shifting landscape of population density, competition, and predation pressure. These dynamics accelerated evolutionary experimentation and the establishment of complex ecological interactions. Yet speed alone proved insufficient, leading to the development of novel offensive and defensive behaviors that would dominate future Cambrian interactions. While rapid motion provided a critical edge, predators still needed targeting strategies, coordinated limb use, and visual guidance, while prey required armor, camouflage, and unpredictable behaviors to survive. The Cambrian seas were not simply fast, they were intelligent, adaptive, and relentlessly competitive, setting the stage for the next chapter in evolutionary innovation, where strategy and specialization would become just as vital as velocity. Invisible weapons. Invisible currents carried more than water. They carried molecules of life and death. In the dim light of Cambrian seas, an unseen battle unfolded, where poisons, enzymes, and deterrent scents drifted through the currents. While claws, spines, and speed ruled the visible realm, the unseen domain of chemistry began to tilt the scales of survival. Here, predators did not always strike with force, they dissolved, paralyzed, and corrupted from within. It was an age when killing evolved beyond the mechanical into the molecular. Some predators evolved digestive secretions capable of weakening prey before physical contact. Primitive arthropods and worm-like hunters may have released enzymes that pre-digested tissues, softening exoskeletons or paralyzing movement before feeding. Modern analogues, like velvet worms and certain marine worms, suggest that external digestion has deep evolutionary roots stretching back to these early oceans. In such encounters, chemical prowess preceded the kill, and prey dissolved into sustenance without a visible struggle. Evidence from gut contents suggests early arthropods could chemically incapacitate small organisms, enhancing capture success. Traces of degraded tissues, preserved within Cambrian fossils, reveal partial digestion inconsistent with purely mechanical feeding. Paleobiologists infer that secreted compounds may have liquefied prey tissue before ingestion, a biochemical shortcut that saved time and energy in a competitive environment. These discoveries, minute though they are, redefine how early predation functioned, not through violence alone, but through mastery of invisible reactions. Defensive chemicals appeared in trilobites and soft-bodied prey, deterring predators through toxicity or foul taste. Fossil evidence of selective predation, some trilobite species showing fewer attack marks than others, implies that chemical defense may have offered real deterrence. Though their exact compounds have long degraded, comparisons to modern arthropods suggest bitter tasting or toxic exudates were common defenses. Such traits would have altered predator behavior, teaching avoidance through evolutionary memory written into instinct. Mineralized exoskeletons occasionally incorporated compounds that reacted with predators' enzymes, reducing digestibility. Experimental modeling of early biomineralization shows that calcium carbonate and trace metals like iron or magnesium may have served more than structural purposes. They interfered with digestive chemistry. These reactive surfaces made prey not only harder to crush, but also harder to consume once broken. In doing so, early life merged chemistry and armor into a single, inseparable form of protection. Some sessile organisms emitted deterrent compounds, signaling danger to nearby species and shaping community interactions. Microbial mats and early sponges, for instance, could exude bioactive chemicals that inhibited settlement of larvae or repelled approaching grazers. These chemical borders defined invisible territories on the sea floor, establishing primitive notions of competition and warning. In these early ecosystems, scent and signal became extensions of survival communication as chemical warfare. Within the microscopic world of the Cambrian seafloor, bacterial colonies may have served as silent laboratories of chemical innovation. Researchers studying stromatolite-associated fossils have proposed that microbial biofilms, dense mats of cyanobacteria and archaea, were early chemical engineers, producing a suite of secondary metabolites that deterred grazers and competing microbes alike. Some of these compounds likely resembled modern antibiotics, reshaping the microbial ecology long before animals joined the fray. By influencing which species could survive in proximity, these microbial chemistries created biochemical gradients that later multicellular organisms would exploit, inheriting both the tools and tactics of chemical control. Toxins may have functioned not only for attack or defense, but also in competition for territory and resources. Some organisms likely released inhibitory compounds to suppress rivals' growth, securing limited space or food. Modern analogues in cyanobacteria and algae support this hypothesis, with fossil microbial mats showing similar exclusion zones. The chemical arena thus reached beyond predator and prey into ecological dominance, where toxicity shaped who could live beside whom. Fossilized remains show evidence of selective predation, implying predators learned to avoid chemically defended prey. Some trilobite groups suffered heavy predation, while others persisted largely untouched, suggesting learned avoidance through evolutionary trial and error. Over generations, such selective pressure would refine the balance between risk and reward, guiding predators toward less defended prey. Each chemical innovation thus reshaped behavioral landscapes as much as anatomical ones. Chemical warfare allowed species to exploit niches inaccessible to mechanically dominant organisms. Where armored predators reigned in open water, smaller chemically equipped species thrived in crevices, sediments, and reefs, domains where touch and sight mattered less than scent and reaction. This diversification hints at a critical evolutionary turning point, the rise of biochemical specialization as a means of survival. Life, for the first time, began to weaponize its own molecular machinery. Even minor biochemical innovations could shift predator-prey balances, creating cascading ecological effects. A toxin that paralyzed one predator might fail against another, driving constant adaptation in both chemistry and physiology. Evolution rewarded subtlety, the ability to sense, resist, or produce the right compound at the right time. What emerged was not a static battlefield, but a dynamic chemical arms race pulsing beneath every wave. The arms race now extended into the molecular realm, where life wielded compounds as weapons unseen by the eye. Chemical gradients guided predators toward prey, while toxins evolved to breach barriers of tissue and armor alike. Each reaction and counter-reaction layered complexity upon the Cambrian biosphere, deepening the interdependence of offense and defense. The ocean had become an alchemist's crucible, refining the art of killing into something almost elegant. Survival depended on a combination of speed, vision, armor, and chemical strategy, layering complexity onto Cambrian interactions. The boundaries between predator and prey blurred as both turned their biology into biochemistry, reshaping ecosystems molecule by molecule. The visible theatre of claws and shells was now only half the story. The other half occurred in the unseen exchanges of molecular attack and resistance. And from this hidden war, evolution would soon demand more than chemistry alone. Invisible yet potent, these chemical battles set the stage for the next wave of evolutionary innovation in predation and defense, where chemical tools would merge with physical mechanisms to create creatures of unparalleled lethality. Speed alone was insufficient, leading to novel offensive and defensive behaviors that would soon redefine what it meant to hunt and to survive. Burrows and hideaways. Across the once exposed Cambrian plains, the surface life began to thin as danger grew more complex. Chemical defenses were no longer enough. Predators could now see, move, and strike with unsettling precision. Those that once basked in the open light of the shallows found themselves under constant threat, their survival dependent not on armor or toxin, but on ingenuity. Evolution's next move was not an escalation in weaponry, but an act of retreat into the hidden world beneath the seabed, where light faded and new forms of life began to rewrite the rules of existence. Beneath the shifting layers of silt, new possibilities unfolded. Life had discovered the safety of concealment. For the first time, the ocean floor was no longer a static stage but a living labyrinth. Creatures once confined to open water began to dig, press, and tunnel through soft sediment in search of refuge. These small acts of excavation, recorded today as delicate trace fossils, mark a profound shift in animal behavior. In these dark, narrow corridors, vulnerability transformed into resilience, and survival found new dimensions within the earth itself. Among the first architects of refuge were the creators of narrow, twisting burrows preserved in ancient sandstone testaments to nervous, deliberate lives lived in hiding. The fossil record speaks in subtle geometry. Treptichnus pedum, the sinuous burrow that winds in probing patterns through Cambrian strata, stands as a signature of awareness. Its repeated, overlapping loops suggest not random digging, but method, a living creature exploring its environment with purpose, mapping safety beneath the reach of danger above. This trace marks the dawn of environmental manipulation, a moment when instinct began to shape landscape. With each scrape into the sediment, these pioneers altered the chemistry and texture of the ocean floor itself. Burrowing oxygenated once stagnant muds, stirred nutrients into circulation and softened compacted layers, creating conditions that favored the rise of new microbial and invertebrate life. What began as refuge became renovation, the first evidence of ecological engineering. The seabed was no longer a flat stage of death and decay, but a dynamic frontier teeming with unseen activity. In this quiet upheaval, life reshaped its own foundation. Within the dark corridors of these early tunnels, predators were momentarily powerless. Vision and speed meant nothing here. The buried realm muffled motion, silenced scent trails, and fractured the visual dominance of open water hunters. For those that had learned to hide, survival was not about confrontation but about absence, becoming invisible in the sediment's shifting folds. Every grain of sand became an ally, every trace of disturbance a line between life and annihilation. Evidence from trace fossils reveals an ecological turning point. Burrowing transformed ecosystems from static surfaces to dynamic three-dimensional habitats. Biotubation, the mixing of sediment by animal movement, expanded nutrient exchange, oxygen diffusion, and microbial diversity, driving one of the earliest large-scale environmental feedbacks in Earth's history. These actions, unintentional yet transformative, forged a new evolutionary arena where behavior shaped geology as powerfully as tectonics or tides. The Cambrian seafloor became a breathing landscape, its surface punctuated by life's first experiments with space and concealment. As some species retreated downward, others adapted to exploit this new vertical dimension, probing and sensing for movement beneath the sediment. The evolution of tactile appendages and vibration-sensitive organs allowed predators to detect hidden prey, pushing both sides into a deeper game of perception. Burrowers responded in turn, developing branching escape routes, decoy tunnels, and spiraled designs to confuse pursuers. The record of these interactions survives not in bones, but in patterns etched in rock as a ghostly conversation between hunter and hidden. Within this escalating struggle, Scolithos and Diplocraterian burrows stand as records of complex spatial awareness. Vertical shafts that open to the surface, sometimes over a meter deep, suggest creatures that combined engineering precision with environmental reading, adjusting burrow depth and angle to oxygen levels, current flow, and predator presence. These trace makers were likely annelid worms or early arthropods, the unseen labourers of Cambrian sediment. Each burrow reveals not only the physicality of movement, but the evolution of behavioural flexibility, an early spark of decision-making that would later underpin cognition itself. Every refuge invited new danger, and the act of hiding began to shape the mind as much as the body. Where once the main evolutionary pressures had been physical teeth, shells, speed, now they extended to strategy. Hiding required awareness of surroundings, sensitivity to vibration, and the capacity to modify one's environment. In this sense, every burrow was not just a home, but a record of thought, a response to the predator's growing intelligence, an externalized memory of fear made durable in stone. The battle for survival was no longer fought only in flesh, it had entered the realm of behavior. Further discoveries in ancient marine shelves, such as the Maotianshan shales of China and the Sirius Passet of Greenland, have revealed fine sedimentary structures, preserving burrow networks in exquisite detail. These formations confirm that the spread of burrowing behavior was global, a synchronized response to rising ecological complexity. With each tunnel and chamber, these organisms subtly altered planetary chemistry, accelerating the burial of organic carbon and influencing oxygen levels in the ocean atmosphere system. Thus, hiding did more than preserve individuals, it changed the trajectory of Earth's environmental evolution. Over time, these behavioral frontiers led to complex feedback loops between predator and prey, each burrow, a lesson in innovation. Hunters evolved methods to flush out sediment dwellers, using water jets, clawed appendages, or vibrations to collapse tunnels and expose their occupants. Prey adapted further, reinforcing walls with mucus, branching escape tunnels, or digging deeper into anoxic layers. Each adaptation demanded greater sensory acuity and mechanical efficiency, weaving cognition into survival. The ocean floor had become a battlefield of strategy rather than brute strength. In the quiet stillness of the seabed, evolution's tempo slowed, but its imagination deepened. Here, in the shadowed spaces beneath the sand, life found both sanctuary and challenge protection that demanded intelligence to maintain. These first acts of concealment rewired the dynamics of predation, teaching both predator and prey to think, to anticipate, and to adapt beyond instinct. From these hidden worlds would emerge not just safety, but strategy, and from strategy, the early seeds of perception that would one day define complex animal minds. Predatory giants. From the shadows of the seabed, movement ascends slow, deliberate, unstoppable. The first rays of daylight scarcely penetrate the Cambrian waters, yet even in this muted glow, colossal hunters glide through the currents with mechanical precision. Life that once relied on concealment now faces entities whose sheer size and reach redefine survival. Anomalocaris, the towering predator of the mid-Cambrian, stretches over a metre long, its frontal appendages flexing like grasping scythes, and compound eyes scanning the horizon with thousands of lenses, calculating motion and distance with terrifying acuity. The ocean has become a realm where dominance is measured in both scale and lethal intent. No longer hidden beneath the sediment, life now meets its hunters face to face. Trilobites, once secure in shallow burrows, are forced into open confrontation. Fossilized bite marks reveal encounters where armored exoskeletons were penetrated or stripped away, leaving victims crushed or partially consumed. Predation is no longer opportunistic or random. It is strategic, targeting size, mobility, and vulnerability. The Cambrian seafloor, previously a theatre of chemical stealth and subterranean refuge, is transformed into a dynamic battleground where survival is a test of both defense and anticipation. Through translucent waters, the form of Anomalocaris glides like a blade through silk. Its lateral lobes undulate rhythmically, propelling the predator with a speed that outmatches nearly all prey. The radial mouth, a circular arrangement of tooth-like plates, opens to engulf trilobites in a single, coordinated strike. Modern biomechanical modelling estimates that its frontal appendages could manipulate prey within a striking radius of 10-15 centimetres, while the eyes, perched on stalks above the head, scanned in near 360-degree vision. Each motion is calibrated, demonstrating that apex predation is as much about computation and awareness as it is about brute force. Every motion in these primordial seas tells a story of pursuit and precision. Herdia moves with similar elegance, yet its body plan emphasizes durability and reach, complementing the sharper speed of Anomalocaris. Fossil evidence suggests repeated predatory encounters, as clusters of injured or dismembered trilobites are found alongside large predator remains. The interplay between predator morphology and prey adaptation is striking. Spines, thickened carapaces, and compact body plans emerge in direct response to these titanic hunters, documenting an evolutionary dialogue written in stone. In the dance between hunter and hunted, balance dissolves into domination. Predators sweep through the water with coordinated movements that combine undulation, jetting, and precise manipulation of their prey-handling appendages. Speed alone does not ensure success. It is vision, coordination, and the development of specialized grasping structures that elevate these giants above all others. The Cambrian seas, alive with motion, reveal a narrative of tension. Every predator's advance triggers a cascade of responses among the prey, from sudden dives into sediment to evasive swirls and rapid directional changes. Armor and agility evolve in parallel, yet neither offers complete salvation. The fossil record shows that even heavily spined trilobites sometimes succumbed to these predators, emphasizing the relentless pressure imposed by apex species. These interactions are not isolated events but shape entire communities. Prey populations are redistributed, niches are redefined, and ecological hierarchies are established. The emergence of such dominant predators accelerates evolutionary experimentation, forcing prey to adopt new strategies in morphology, behavior, and habitat selection. Eyes, once simple photoreceptors, now bloom into complex organs of calculation. The compound eyes of Anomalocaris and its relatives, with up to 16,000 lenses, capture light and motion in remarkable detail, providing predators with unprecedented environmental awareness. This visual sophistication allows them to detect prey partially hidden in sediment, or to track multiple targets simultaneously. Predatory success is no longer random. It is the outcome of precise perception coupled with physical capability. Evolution has begun to intertwine sensory sophistication with predatory efficiency. The water trembles with the weight of conflict, claws closing, carapaces cracking. Fossil beds from the Burgess Shale and Chengjiang deposits preserve the chaotic aftermath. Disarticulated prey, fragmented exoskeletons, and fossilized impressions of predatory appendages. Each encounter is a testament to the selective power of apex predation, where only the most adaptable survive. This lethal pressure does more than cull populations. It sets the stage for the emergence of novel defensive adaptations, from reinforced armor to faster, more erratic escape movements. Predators stretch the limits of size, strength, and sensory refinement. Opabinia regalis, with its flexible proboscis tipped by a grasping claw, exemplifies the ingenuity of Cambrian hunters. Its unique morphology demonstrates that apex predation is not constrained to sheer bulk. Specialized tools and appendages expand the repertoire of hunting strategies. Across the seas, these giants dominate both physically and ecologically, enforcing boundaries and shaping the very structure of their communities. Even the smallest creatures adapt, weaving defenses of speed and unpredictability, burrowing behavior, chemical deterrence, and sudden escape maneuvers are amplified under the shadow of these apex predators. The evolutionary arms race now operates on multiple levels: mechanical, behavioral, sensory, and ecological. Predators drive prey innovation, and prey, in turn, challenge predators to refine strategies, creating a dynamic feedback loop that accelerates complexity across the entire ecosystem. From these clashes emerges an unseen architect, the evolutionary pressure itself. The sheer presence of apex predators restructures communities, dictating which species thrive, which strategies succeed, and which organisms vanish into extinction. Evolution is no longer guided solely by random mutation and environmental drift. It is sculpted actively by predation, a relentless force shaping anatomy, behavior, and ecosystem dynamics. Life in the Cambrian seas is simultaneously beautiful, brutal, and unforgiving. In this new age of teeth and motion, survival becomes an art of anticipation. Each movement, each strike, each retreat carries lessons for both predator and prey, driving a continuous escalation in capability and cunning. Apex predation pressures smaller species to evolve new defensive measures, reshaping armor, speed, burrowing behavior, and chemical strategies. In the wake of these giants, evolution accelerates, and life is forced to innovate or perish, a lesson that will echo through every ocean for hundreds of millions of years. Tiny killers. In the wake of towering hunters, life finds power in miniature forms. While the colossal predators of the Cambrian seas dominated the open waters, a subtler revolution unfolded beneath and between their shadows. Small arthropods, proto-annelid worms, and microscopic hunters emerged, exploiting niches inaccessible to the giants. These tiny predators operated with precision, speed, and stealth, proving that lethality was not measured in size, but in adaptability. Every minute appendage and bristle became a tool of survival, and each strike, no matter how small, reverberated across the ecosystem, influencing the evolution of creatures far larger than themselves. Below the rolling surf, microscopic jaws seize planktonic prey, unseen yet deadly. Protocrustaceans patrolled the upper layers of sediment, grazing on unicellular organisms while ambushing smaller motile prey. Their mandibles, only a few millimeters long, could crush shells or tear soft-bodied organisms apart with astonishing efficiency. Fossil evidence from Burgess Shale deposits reveals preserved gut contents, showcasing a variety of consumed organisms, from algae to microinvertebrates, demonstrating a complexity of diet that parallels modern small predators. Proto-arthropods glide along seafloor surfaces, probing sediment with precision appendages. These limbs, often jointed and equipped with sensory bristles, allowed the organisms to detect subtle vibrations in the sediment, signaling the presence of prey or potential threats. By carefully navigating the labyrinth of burrows and hiding spots left by larger organisms, these miniature hunters exploited resources overlooked by apex predators. Their movements reveal not randomness, but a strategic awareness of microhabitats, optimizing feeding opportunities while minimizing exposure. Even the smallest burrowing worms exhibit targeted strikes, devouring microorganisms with efficiency. Polychaete-like annelids excavated shallow tunnels, ambushing protozoans or detrital feeders that drifted too close. Sediment analyses indicate clusters of such organisms in high-density areas, suggesting coordinated or habitual hunting patterns. Though diminutive, these predators shaped the sediment ecosystem, redistributing nutrients and influencing microbial populations, effectively sculpting their immediate environment through predation. The contents of fossilized guts demonstrate complex diets, confirming that predation transcended size in the Cambrian. Tiny arthropods often consumed a mixture of detritus and live prey, blurring the line between scavenging and active hunting. Microscopic evidence of chitinous fragments and small shells in gut fossils highlights a previously underappreciated dynamic. Even the smallest predators were both predators and ecosystem engineers. Their feeding behaviors drove selection pressures on microprey, prompting faster escape responses, cryptic behaviors, and defensive exoskeleton modifications. Tiny appendages, bristles, and claws become instruments of lethality, sculpted for specialized hunting. Some species evolved chelate-like claws to grasp individual cells or soft-bodied organisms, while others developed filtering bristles to trap planktonic swarms. Morphological adaptations reveal a diversity of predatory strategies scaled to size, illustrating that efficiency, rather than strength, defined success. In this realm, Rapid reflexes, sensory precision, and environmental manipulation determined survival more than raw power ever could. Among the microscopic hunters, chemical warfare quietly emerges as a tool of predation. In addition to physical attacks, some small Cambrian predators employed biochemical strategies to immobilize or weaken their prey. Certain proto-arthropods and worm-like organisms likely secreted enzymes or toxins to break down soft-bodied prey or deter competitors within their microhabitats. Fossilized sediment analyses show localized traces of organic compounds in proximity to burrows, suggesting targeted chemical interactions that enhanced feeding efficiency. This subtle yet potent form of lethality demonstrates that even the tiniest organisms could wield sophisticated survival tools, foreshadowing the complex predator-prey dynamics that would later dominate the Cambrian seas. Across the ocean floor, minute predators influence the distribution and behavior of larger organisms. Their predation creates a ripple effect. Small organisms consuming juveniles or larvae alter recruitment rates for larger species, indirectly shaping population dynamics and community composition. Even apex predators, such as Anomalocaris, may have been forced to adapt to the proliferation of micropredation by shifting hunting patterns, illustrating how scale diversity generates multi-tiered evolutionary pressure. Parasitic interactions emerge, further illustrating that predation operates on multiple scales. Minute predators exploit their hosts in ways that do not require overpowering strength, instead relying on attachment, toxin delivery, or stealthy feeding. Fossil evidence of small borings in exoskeletons or attachment scars indicates that parasitism was a complementary strategy, expanding the scope of lethality in the Cambrian seas. These interactions demonstrate that survival strategies ranged from direct attack to subtle, persistent exploitation. Communities become interlaced networks, where micropredation drives adaptation among both small and large prey. Behavioral, structural, and sensory innovations spread through populations as a direct response to these miniature hunters. Burrowers may refine tunnel architecture, trilobites reinforce exoskeletons, and even mid-sized predators adjust strike tactics. The cumulative effect is a cascading web of interdependencies, where every level of the ecosystem reacts to predatory pressure, no matter how slight or localized. The proliferation of miniature killers accelerates evolutionary arms races, pressuring armor, mobility, and sensory sophistication across species. Small predators, often overlooked, exert disproportionately strong selective forces, shaping traits that will later influence interactions with larger predators. From this dynamic arises one of the first signs that ecosystem complexity is not merely additive, but multiplicative, as each predation niche compounds pressures and responses across multiple scales. With each successful strike, these small predators assert a disproportionate influence on ecological structure. Their feeding habits alter sediment composition, resource availability, and the micro-distribution of organisms, demonstrating that lethality is as much about ecosystem engineering as it is about direct consumption. Their presence confirms a critical evolutionary principle. Survival and influence do not scale linearly with body size. Tiny hunters teach life that efficiency, strategy, and opportunism are as powerful as brute force. Ultimately, the Cambrian seas are defined not only by size, but by the ingenuity and lethality of creatures of all scales. Apex predators dominate the spectacle, but beneath them, countless miniature killers orchestrate subtle but profound effects on population dynamics, resource distribution, and evolutionary pressures. Scale diversity adds complexity to Cambrian food webs, escalating evolutionary pressure and ensuring that no organism, however small, is exempt from the relentless game of survival. In this intricate dance, life demonstrates that innovation, rather than size, dictates its ability to endure. The arms race intensifies. In the unfolding struggle of survival, every edge counts, and evolution moves with relentless urgency. Cambrian seas, once defined by isolated predatory events, become arenas of continuous innovation. Predators and prey engage in an unending dialogue of offense and defense, each adaptation prompting a countermeasure. Every creature, from apex hunters to diminutive micropredators, participates in this escalation, shaping a world in which lethality is the currency of survival. Shells once adequate against predators now fail, prompting rapid innovation in defensive architecture. Trilobites develop increasingly complex exoskeletons, with overlapping plates, spines, and reinforced edges to deter attacks from grasping appendages. Fossilized trilobite carapaces reveal bite marks and fractures, evidence of persistent predation pressures. Even the smallest armored organisms demonstrate microscopic ridges and reinforcing structures, proving that no scale of life escapes evolutionary scrutiny. Eyes sharpen, antennae twitch, and sensory appendages reach new complexity, revealing the invisible signals of danger. Compound eyes expand, gaining thousands of lenses that detect motion across wide visual fields, while antennae and tactile organs evolve heightened sensitivity to subtle vibrations. Predators such as Anomalocaris exploit these sensory refinements to track elusive prey, while prey species evolve anticipatory responses, freezing or darting in the split second before capture. The sensory arms race heightens awareness, turning the Cambrian seas into a world of constant vigilance. Predators refine grasping limbs and cutting structures, honing the precision of their attacks with unprecedented accuracy. Anomalocaridids develop spiny frontal appendages capable of seizing even well-armoured trilobites, while smaller arthropods evolve raptorial limbs to snatch plankton and juvenile prey. Fossilized appendage morphologies reveal sharp, serrated edges and fine articulations, evidence that precision strikes, rather than sheer force, define predatory success. These innovations allow hunters to overcome defenses that were previously insurmountable. Tiny hunters adapt in parallel, exploiting weaknesses unnoticed by their larger counterparts. Protoarthropods and polychaete worms modify their burrowing techniques, secretions, and strike mechanics to capture prey undetected. Chemical deterrents, ambush tactics, and micro-scale speed bursts allow these small predators to influence the ecosystem far beyond their size. Their adaptations are subtle yet consequential, accelerating evolutionary feedback loops across multiple levels of the food web. Sediment-dwelling creatures develop labyrinthine tunnels, chemical repellents, and sudden bursts of movement to elude threats. Burrows become complex networks, offering both refuge and strategic vantage points for ambush. Evidence of chemical traces in fossilized sediment suggests that some organisms could exude noxious compounds to discourage intruders, creating invisible yet potent defenses. These behavioral innovations amplify survival probabilities, illustrating that offense and defense are not merely morphological, but deeply intertwined with habitat exploitation. Chemical signaling begins to orchestrate interactions across species, adding a hidden layer to the evolutionary arms race. Beyond physical adaptations, many Cambrian organisms evolved the ability to detect and respond to chemical cues released by predators or prey. Some trilobites and worms could sense predator presence through minute compounds in the water, triggering rapid burrowing or evasive movements. Likewise, Proto-arthropod hunters may have exploited chemical trails to track prey or locate competitors, effectively extending their sensory reach beyond vision and touch. Fossilized sediment layers indicate localized concentrations of organic compounds, suggesting that chemical communication and detection played a measurable role in shaping predation strategies and survival behaviors across multiple species. Through reefs and along seafloor plains, evolutionary pressures ripple through communities, reshaping behavior and morphology alike. Species respond not only to direct attacks, but to the broader ecological context shaped by other evolving organisms. The interplay between predator and prey drives diversification, with new body plans, locomotion strategies, and defensive traits emerging almost in lockstep. Cambrian ecosystems thus become dynamic, ever-changing tapestries, where each adaptation contributes to an intricate network of survival strategies. Each adaptation sparks a response. A spine becomes longer, a claw sharper, a body swifter. Fossil records demonstrate repeated cycles of innovation, where incremental changes confer survival advantages that are immediately tested against predators or prey. This continual escalation creates an evolutionary cascade, increasing the pace and intensity of adaptations across species. No single innovation exists in isolation. Each triggers selective pressures that propagate through the web of life. Anomalocaridids demonstrate apex escalation, where size, speed, and sensory sophistication converge in formidable hunting machines. These predators epitomize the arms race, combining powerful swimming abilities, grasping appendages, and acute vision to dominate mid to upper tier prey. Yet even they are affected by the innovations of smaller organisms, whose evasive tactics and micro-predation strategies force adjustments in hunting patterns and target selection. Apex status confers advantage, but not immunity, emphasizing that adaptation is universal. Meanwhile, diminutive predators quietly exert influence, proving that even minor innovations drive significant ecological change. Small hunters modify behavior, locomotion, and appendage function in response to the defenses and behaviors of larger predators and prey alike. Their cumulative impact shapes resource distribution, predator-prey interactions, and evolutionary trajectories, demonstrating that lethality operates across scales. Tiny innovations ripple outward, catalyzing further adaptations throughout the ecosystem. The interactions among predator and prey become increasingly intricate, interweaving behavior, anatomy, and environment into a living web of challenge and response. Escalation manifests in the diversity of strategies: armored shells, sensory enhancements, rapid strikes, ambush techniques, chemical secretions, and burrow defenses. Together, these adaptations create a feedback loop where innovation by one species triggers evolutionary responses in many others. Cambrian seas are now arenas of continual experimentation where the race for survival drives relentless creativity. Above all, the Cambrian seas are a theatre of constant invention where survival demands ingenuity at every scale. Rapid adaptation transforms these ecosystems into arenas of continuous threat and innovation, in which predator and prey alike refine their strategies, morphologies, and behaviors with unparalleled speed. The stage is set for even greater evolutionary consequences, as the interplay of offense and defense will continue to escalate, preparing life for the next chapter of complex interactions, ecological dominance, and the shaping of future ecosystems. Ecosystems in turmoil. Turbulent currents carry more than water. They transmit the consequences of every predator-prey encounter across the seafloor. The relentless escalation of adaptations has transformed Cambrian seas into dynamic arenas where each species' innovations reverberate beyond itself. A clawed appendage that pierces a trilobite carapace, or a burrow that shields a worm from an ambush, sets off chains of ecological consequences, influencing who survives, who reproduces, and how populations distribute themselves across the ocean floor. In crowded Cambrian communities, survival hinges on the ability to occupy specialized roles within an emerging hierarchy. Apex predators, such as Anomalocaris, dominate open waters, while burrowing trilobites carve out refuges below the sediment, and smaller polychaete worms patrol microhabitats for food. Fossil assemblages reveal the coexistence of these diverse lifestyles, demonstrating that ecological niches are no longer optional but essential for survival. Each species' role affects others, creating a complex network of interdependent interactions. Spines, shells, and burrows no longer protect only individuals. They shape the spatial distribution of entire populations. Densely armored trilobites cluster in safer zones, while lightly defended species disperse to avoid concentrated predation. The interplay between morphology and habitat use demonstrates that defensive traits carry both individual and community-level consequences. Sediment analyses show that these spatial patterns persist over time, highlighting the lasting impact of predation on population structures. Feeding strategies evolve in response to competition as well as predation, redefining who eats, whom and when. Scavenging, ambushing, and opportunistic feeding emerge alongside specialized predatory behaviors as organisms exploit every available resource. Gut contents from Burgess Shale fossils indicate unexpected trophic interactions, including predators consuming other predators and smaller scavengers feeding on partially digested prey. These layered feeding relationships create a complex web where energy and nutrients flow through multiple pathways. Sediment layers preserve snapshots of interactions, revealing the coexistence of competitors, scavengers, and ambushers. Trace fossils show burrows intersecting with feeding tunnels, suggesting overlapping territories and contested refuges. Tooth marks and bite scars indicate repeated encounters among predators and prey alike. Each fossilized imprint provides evidence of how life adapted not only to survive attacks, but also to navigate competition for limited resources in crowded environments. Even the tiniest hunters influence energy flow, controlling prey populations and altering the availability of resources. Micropredators and meiofauna exploit cracks, crevices, and interstitial spaces inaccessible to larger predators, yet their cumulative impact shapes community structure. By regulating the abundance of microbial mats, plankton, and small detritivores, these organisms indirectly affect larger species that depend on the same resources, demonstrating that lethality is not restricted by size but amplified through ecological interactions. Paleogeographic variation further amplifies ecological complexity as currents, depth, and substrate influence predator-prey dynamics. Not all Cambrian seas were uniform. Shallow lagoons, deep basins, and reef-like structures created localized environments where species assemblages diverged dramatically. In shallow, well-lit zones, agile predators dominated, forcing prey to evolve speed, armor, and burrowing behaviors. In deeper, low-light habitats, soft-bodied species relied more heavily on camouflage and chemical defenses, while predators adapted elongated appendages and enhanced sensory organs to track elusive prey. Fossil evidence from geographically distinct sites, such as the Chengjiang and Sirius Passet biotas, highlights these differences, showing that regional environmental factors shaped the diversity of interactions, further complicating food webs and driving localized evolutionary pressures. Visual signals, chemical cues, and mechanical defenses combine to form a complex network of interdependencies. Compound eyes, sensory antennae, and chemoreceptors allow predators to detect prey and competitors, while prey interpret these signals to initiate evasive or defensive behaviors. Chemical secretions, spines, and exoskeletal reinforcements further complicate interactions, creating a multi-layered system in which survival depends on the constant interpretation of environmental and biological information. Patterns of predation ripple through communities, encouraging diversification of body plans, locomotion, and sensory adaptations. Fast-swimming predators spur the evolution of streamlined bodies in prey, while burrowing species develop complex tunnel networks and secondary escape behaviors. Each adaptive innovation fosters additional adaptations in others, creating a cascading process of coevolution. Over time, the Cambrian seas become a crucible for experimentation, where natural selection shapes not only individuals, but the very architecture of ecosystems. The interplay between burrowing species and roaming predators illustrates the delicate balance between refuge and exposure. Burrows provide shelter, but concentrate prey, attracting persistent hunters capable of detecting hidden signals. Predators refine strategies to locate and extract these hidden organisms, while prey diversify tunnel layouts, adopt chemical deterrents, or engage in sudden evasive maneuvers. Fossilized burrow systems, paired with bite marks and predation traces, reveal a constant negotiation between safety and risk that defines community structure. Soft-bodied organisms and microbial mats form the ecological scaffolding upon which higher trophic levels are built. Planktonic and benthic organisms create foundational biomass that sustains small predators, which in turn support larger predators. Disruptions at any level of this base can reverberate upward, altering predator efficiency and the survival of multiple species. These interactions illustrate that predation does not operate in isolation, but drives cascading ecological effects throughout the Cambrian marine world. Every innovation by predator or prey radiates consequences, subtly shaping competition, cooperation, and habitat use. New adaptations modify food web dynamics, influence species abundance, and redefine ecological niches. Fossil records suggest that communities with more diverse defenses and predation strategies achieved greater resilience, highlighting the evolutionary importance of ecological complexity. Each interaction becomes a node in a vast network of evolutionary pressures, shaping both individual survival and broader community outcomes. By the end of this period, Cambrian seas become dynamic webs of interaction, where every action leaves an indelible mark on evolution. Predator-prey dynamics have structured communities in ways that favor specialization, resilience, and diversification. These complex food webs illustrate that lethality and survival are not isolated phenomena, but are deeply interwoven into the ecological fabric of the time. Every interaction, from the smallest hunter to the largest predator, contributes to the cascading patterns that will define life's future trajectories, setting the stage for even more sophisticated evolutionary strategies to come. The rise of specialized predators. The seafloor brims with predators that no longer hunt indiscriminately, their forms shaped by the precise demands of their prey. As Cambrian seas teem with life, certain hunters diverge from generalist strategies, targeting specific species with anatomical and behavioral refinements. Among them, Anomalocaris emerges as a formidable apex predator, its grasping frontal appendages and circular mouthparts designed to pierce and shred trilobite armor. This era marks a turning point. Lethality is no longer a blunt instrument, but a calculated art, executed with precision, honed over millions of years. Clawed appendages, serrated limbs, and reinforced jaws mark a departure from generalized predation. Fossil evidence reveals that appendages previously used for grasping sediment or random prey are now specialized. Some evolved to crush exoskeletons, others to snatch soft-bodied organisms. These structural innovations demonstrate how selective pressures drive anatomical divergence, enabling predators to exploit niches that were previously inaccessible. Evolutionary experimentation accelerates, with multiple lineages exploring distinct predatory solutions simultaneously. Gut contents from Burgess Shale fossils reveal remarkable dietary specialization, from trilobite targeting hunters to scavengers of soft-bodied species. The presence of partially digested trilobite carapaces in Anomalocaris specimens contrasts sharply with evidence of fine prey feeding in other herdiid relatives. Such data provide tangible proof that the Cambrian food web is stratifying into specialized channels, with different predators exerting targeted pressure on particular prey populations. This division of dietary labor intensifies the arms race and accelerates evolutionary innovation. Sensory innovations compound eyes, antennae, and chemoreceptors allow predators to detect specific prey amidst chaotic seas. Fossilized eyes from Chengjiang and Burgess Shale species demonstrate that some early arthropods possessed hundreds of lenses, providing exceptional spatial resolution. Antennae and sensory bristles complement visual acuity, enabling predators to perceive subtle movements or chemical cues in murky waters. With enhanced perception, predators can pursue or ambush prey with remarkable accuracy, shifting the balance in favor of the hunter. Some species develop ambush strategies, lying in wait for particular prey that trigger specialized hunting sequences. Certain herdiid predators appear adapted for slow, stealthy stalking, relying on surprise rather than speed. Their spiny appendages and articulated limbs allow sudden grasping motions, capturing unwary trilobites that venture too close. Fossilized trackways and resting impressions hint at these patient tactics, illustrating that behavioral specialization evolves alongside morphology to enhance predation efficiency. Morphological adaptations are mirrored by behavioral specialization, where attack timing, speed, and coordination align with targeted prey types. Predators synchronize movement patterns with prey activity cycles, and some may have used environmental cover or tidal patterns to optimize hunting success. The integration of physical form with strategic behavior signals a new stage in the sophistication of life. Lethality is informed, not merely opportunistic, and every move carries evolutionary consequence. Studying early anomalocaridids reveals divergent strategies, with some evolving crushing appendages and others fine grasping limbs. These contrasts underscore the experimental nature of evolution during the Cambrian Explosion. Multiple solutions emerge in parallel, with ecological feedback determining which forms succeed. Fossil evidence shows that predators with specialized appendages often dominate in areas with particular prey availability, demonstrating that success is contingent upon ecological alignment rather than sheer size or strength. Delicate microstructures in fossils reveal another layer of specialization, as some predators evolved filtering structures to exploit abundant plankton and tiny larvae. Not all specialization was focused on large or armored prey. Certain early arthropods and anomalocaridid relatives developed fine, comb-like appendages capable of sieving minute organisms from the water column. These adaptations allowed them to exploit resources overlooked by larger hunters, effectively creating new ecological niches. Records preserved in microfossils and trace fossils showed dense concentrations of planktonic prey coinciding with the morphology of these filter-feeding structures, demonstrating that lethality and predatory efficiency were not constrained by size or strength. By diversifying their feeding strategies in this way, Cambrian predators amplified their ecological impact and intensified selective pressures on prey species across multiple scales. The ecological consequences ripple outward. Prey populations adjust, seeking refuge or developing defensive countermeasures in response to precise predation. Trilobites evolve tighter enrollment abilities, spines lengthen, and burrows become more complex. Soft-bodied species may alter habitat use or increase mobility to evade capture. In every case, predator specialization drives the refinement of prey defenses, creating a feedback loop of co-evolution that accelerates diversity and complexity across the seafloor. Selective pressure drives innovation on both sides, resulting in a rapid co-evolutionary cycle of specialization and adaptation. Predator and prey continuously respond to each other's modifications, generating a cascade of evolutionary change. Over time, these reciprocal pressures produce distinct lineages finely tuned to their ecological roles, laying the groundwork for future trophic stratification and the eventual rise of even more complex marine communities. Over time, Cambrian communities are structured not only by size or speed, but by the cunning specificity of predators and the resilience of their prey. Specialization becomes a currency of survival. Those predators that can exploit narrow prey niches thrive, while prey species must continuously adapt or risk extinction. Fossil evidence demonstrates that these finely balanced dynamics dominate seafloor ecosystems, with every anatomical innovation prompting cascading ecological effects. Each specialized predator introduces new dynamics, altering competition, resource allocation, and spatial organization across the seafloor. As multiple predator species carve out niches, the Cambrian seas resemble a chessboard of strategic interactions where movement, timing, and physical form are interdependent. This intricate dance reshapes the very structure of marine communities, revealing that lethality and adaptation are deeply entwined in the choreography of life. At last, these evolutionary experiments establish the groundwork for even more complex food webs and predation strategies that will define later marine ecosystems. Specialization sharpens the edge of survival, compelling prey to refine countermeasures, innovate defenses, and diversify habitats. In this crucible of adaptation, the Cambrian seas become arenas of intelligence, precision, and relentless evolutionary pressure, setting the stage for future ecological revolutions that will continue to redefine life's possibilities. Predatory innovation. Hunting in the Cambrian seas is no longer a mere matter of appendage and jaw. Strategy begins to define success. As predators refined their anatomy, they simultaneously evolved behaviors that enhanced lethality, turning the seafloor into a theater of calculated pursuit. Ambush, stalking, and even rudimentary coordination emerged as tools to capture prey with precision, demonstrating that intelligence and cunning were as crucial as size or strength. These behavioral innovations mark a turning point in the escalation of life's deadly strategies, where the mind begins to complement morphology in the quest for survival. Certain anomalocaridids employ ambush tactics, lying in wait among reef structures or beneath sediment mounds to seize unsuspecting prey. Fossil evidence suggests these predators remained motionless for extended periods, striking only when prey approached within reach of their grasping appendages. Reinforced limbs, spiny projections, and articulated frontal claws allow them to execute rapid, precise strikes, highlighting the integration of anatomy and behavior. Ambush is not random. It is an adaptive technique that maximizes energy efficiency while increasing capture success, illustrating the strategic intelligence of these early hunters. Stalking behaviors emerge, with predators tracking specific prey over extended distances using keen sensory perception. Compound eyes and antennae enable them to detect subtle movements or chemical cues across the murky Cambrian waters. Fossilized burrows and tracks indicate that some predators followed prey through intricate reef networks, maintaining proximity until the optimal moment for attack. This sustained pursuit requires patience and precise timing, demonstrating that predation had evolved beyond opportunistic encounters into a prolonged tactical engagement. Coordinated attacks hint at primitive social behavior or synchronous hunting, magnifying the efficiency of group predation. While evidence remains rare, some fossil assemblages suggest that multiple predators could operate in concert, herding or trapping prey to overwhelm defenses. Such behaviors amplify lethality without relying solely on size or brute force, indicating that early cooperation may have been an important evolutionary experiment. Coordination transforms the hunting landscape, compelling prey to develop more complex escape strategies and reinforcing the arms race within Cambrian ecosystems. Evidence from fossilized burrows and resting traces reveals positioning and timing used to optimize ambush success. Certain predators appear to have selected specific locations for concealment, exploiting topography, sediment texture, and environmental light gradients to remain undetected. Bite marks on trilobites and other prey show repeated strike patterns consistent with targeted attack points, reinforcing the notion of planned predation. These traces collectively suggest that early hunters were aware consciously or instinctively of spatial dynamics and leverage in their environment. Appendage specialization complements behavior, allowing precise and rapid strikes during these calculated hunting sequences. Frontal claws, spiny limbs, and flexible grasping appendages provide a lethal combination of speed and dexterity, enhancing the effectiveness of both ambush and pursuit. Morphological refinement synchronizes with behavioral innovation. Predators with superior limb control can execute stalking and cooperative strategies that less specialized species cannot, illustrating the interplay of form and function in early predation. Chemical and visual cues guide some predators in subtle ways, revealing an early sophistication in sensory-based hunting. Recent analyses of Cambrian fossil deposits indicate that certain anomalocaridids and other arthropods likely relied on chemical trails and light detection adaptations to locate prey across varied terrain. Specialized setae and sensory pits on their appendages could detect shifts in water chemistry or minute vibrations caused by movement, allowing predators to anticipate prey paths even before direct sight was possible. From trace fossil evidence emerges repeated approach patterns toward prey burrows and nesting sites, suggesting that these organisms learned or instinctively optimized their hunting routes over time. This integration of environmental sensing with behavioral tactics adds a previously underappreciated layer of predatory innovation, showing that even at this early stage, predators exploited multiple sensory channels to enhance success. Smaller predators also adopt cunning approaches, exploiting camouflage, movement patterns, and environmental features to capture prey. Miniaturized anomalocaridids and early arthropods use stealth and quick strikes rather than size or brute strength, demonstrating that lethal impact is not constrained by scale. Fossilized impressions suggest intricate hiding strategies, where predators position themselves in reef crevices or sediment depressions to surprise passing prey. These techniques reveal that even diminutive hunters could dominate ecological niches when armed with behavioral ingenuity. The interplay between predator tactics and prey countermeasures escalates the evolutionary arms race, fostering rapid adaptation. Prey develop improved enrollment abilities, longer spines, and more sophisticated burrowing techniques to evade ambush and stalking predators. In response, hunters refine sensory perception, attack timing, and coordination, generating a feedback loop that accelerates evolutionary change. The Cambrian seas are thus transformed into a dynamic landscape where every interaction carries survival consequences, shaping morphology, behavior, and community composition simultaneously. Spatial and temporal patterns of predation suggest an early form of ecological planning, where predators optimize energy expenditure, ambush sites are selected for high prey traffic, stalking routes maximize encounter likelihood, and coordinated strikes minimize wasted effort. These behaviors indicate that efficiency, not just raw power, drives survival, setting the stage for increasingly sophisticated strategies. Energy optimization becomes a guiding principle in predator evolution, influencing the distribution and behavior of both hunters and prey. Each behavioral innovation reshapes the structure of the Cambrian community, altering both competition and resource availability. Predators that successfully integrate ambush, stalking, and coordination dominate key ecological niches, forcing prey species to adopt new survival tactics and reallocate habitats. This cascading effect restructures food webs, reinforcing the interconnectedness of predator and prey and demonstrating that behavioral sophistication is a major driver of ecological complexity. By layering tactics onto anatomical specialization, predators create a multidimensional threat that forces prey to evolve new defensive strategies. Physical armor, speed, and camouflage are complemented by spatial awareness and timing, creating a composite challenge for survival. Prey adaptation accelerates as selective pressure intensifies, generating a rich mosaic of ecological interactions that underscore the innovative potential of life during the Cambrian Explosion. In these complex seas, the sophistication of hunting behavior underscores the emergence of intelligence in early ecosystems, hinting at the behavioral depth that will continue to evolve in later marine life. The advent of strategic predation demonstrates that lethality is not merely a product of morphology, but of calculation, timing, and environmental awareness. These behavioral experiments set the stage for increasingly intricate food webs, where survival hinges on both brain and brawn, and where every evolutionary step redefines the rules of life and death in the Cambrian oceans. Ecological explosion. Vast expanses of Cambrian seafloor now teem with life, each species navigating a landscape of relentless pressure and opportunity. Predators and prey interact in intricate, almost choreographed patterns, their movements shaping the flow of energy and survival across the sediment-laden plains. Fossil beds reveal dense assemblages where trilobites scuttle, anomalocaridids hover, and early arthropods exploit every available niche. The sheer diversity of forms, from armored exoskeletons to flexible grasping appendages, illustrates the cumulative impact of behavioral and morphological innovation on entire communities. Fossil beds reveal an astonishing proliferation of body plans, from armored trilobites to agile anomalocaridids, each reflecting a different evolutionary solution to predation and survival. Shell thickness, spiny projections, and articulated limbs indicate selective pressures that favored both protection and mobility. Sedimentary evidence shows stratified layers containing myriad species coexisting, suggesting that the Cambrian explosion was not just a temporal spike in diversity, but also a spatial expansion into unoccupied ecological niches. Each form represents a calculated response to threats, an evolutionary experiment codified in stone. Predation and defense strategies intersect in unpredictable ways, producing intricate webs of ecological interaction. Ambush predators and stalking hunters exploit openings created by prey hiding in burrows or under reef structures. Defensive adaptations, in turn, trigger further refinement in hunting techniques. Fossilized bite marks and trackways reveal repeated patterns, indicating learned or instinctive strategies employed by both predator and prey. This dynamic interplay ensures that survival is not merely a matter of anatomy, but also of behavior, timing, and opportunity. Microhabitats and refuges emerge as selective pressures drive species into specialized roles and niches. Shallow reef complexes shelter small filter feeders, while crevices and depressions harbor burrowers and armored species. Evidence of trilobite enrollment and sediment tracking trails reveals adaptations to evade increasingly sophisticated predators. These spaces serve as evolutionary crucibles, where innovation is tested and refined, resulting in a spatially complex tapestry of life forms adapted to precise environmental conditions. Spines, shells, and rapid escape behaviors appear in concert with sophisticated hunting tactics, illustrating co-evolution in real time. Predators develop specialized appendages to breach defenses, while prey species diversify their armaments and locomotion strategies. Fossilized exoskeletons show variation in spine length, curvature, and articulation, corresponding to predation pressures from particular hunting species. The Cambrian seas thus transform into an arena of constant trial, where evolutionary ingenuity is rewarded with survival and mistakes are fossilized for posterity. Some species exploit resources in entirely novel ways, reshaping the flow of energy and nutrients across the seafloor. Sessile filter feeders filter microscopic plankton, while opportunistic scavengers capitalize on detritus and failed predation attempts. Evidence of burrowing arthropods disturbing sediments indicates nutrient redistribution, effectively engineering microenvironments for other species. Such ecosystem engineering demonstrates that even seemingly minor behaviors can have cascading effects, influencing community composition and energy dynamics. Complex food webs form as predator-prey dynamics cascade through multiple trophic levels. Large anomalocaridids hunt medium-sized arthropods, while smaller predators seize juvenile trilobites, and filter feeders capture planktonic organisms. Trace fossils suggest energy flows from basal producers to apex predators, mediated by behaviorally and morphologically diverse species. The complexity of these interactions emphasizes that survival is no longer a linear contest, but a multi-dimensional network of interdependence, shaped by both opportunity and threat. Trace fossils indicate movement patterns and feeding strategies that hint at early ecosystem engineering by both predators and prey. Repeated burrow entrances, feeding marks, and resting traces reveal spatial memory and habitual usage, reflecting selective pressures that extend beyond single encounters. Predators exploit habitual prey routes, while prey species shift behaviors in response, demonstrating early examples of learned or instinctive ecological planning. These patterns highlight how behavioral innovation extends from individuals to entire populations, sculpting the environment itself. Biodiversity surges unevenly across environments, reflecting the varied intensity of predation and competition. Shallow, light-rich zones foster rapid diversification of visually guided hunters and armored prey, whereas deeper or more sediment-laden areas select for burrowing specialists and stealth predators. Fossil assemblages show a clear gradient in species composition, body size, and defensive traits, underlining that environmental heterogeneity and selective pressure are co-drivers of Cambrian diversity. These differential pressures accelerate adaptation, producing a mosaic of life forms finely tuned to their specific habitats. Interactions between species catalyze new forms of adaptation, reinforcing the accelerating feedback loops of survival and innovation. Predators that succeed in one strategy prompt the emergence of counter-strategies in prey, which in turn triggers further refinement in offensive techniques. Fossil records display correlated increases in predator appendage sophistication and prey defensive morphology over relatively short geological intervals. The Cambrian seafloor becomes a laboratory of evolutionary experimentation where every encounter drives innovation, shaping life with an intensity previously unseen. Even marginal shifts in morphology or behavior ripple through the community, reshaping predator-prey balances. Slightly faster movement, subtle changes in spine curvature, or refined claw articulation can tip survival odds, favoring certain species and influencing community structure. These micro-adaptations accumulate, producing significant macro-scale consequences across populations and ecological networks. The fossil record encodes these evolutionary cascades, preserving a dynamic portrait of survival under the relentless pressure of predation. In these seas, the relentless interplay of attack, defense, and ecological opportunity has crafted a world of staggering complexity. Each species, from the tiniest arthropod to the apex anomalocaridid, contributes to a network of interdependence shaped by behavioral ingenuity, morphological refinement, and environmental exploitation. The Cambrian oceans have become a crucible of evolution, where predation drives innovation, defense spurs adaptation, and the resulting biodiversity lays the groundwork for the intricate ecosystems that will continue to develop in Earth's unfolding story of life. A surge of life reshaped ancient seas, where every shadow held danger and every movement demanded cunning. In this crucible of evolution, survival was carved by teeth, claws, and ingenuity, and the rules of life were rewritten in stone and sediment. The Cambrian oceans were a theatre of relentless innovation, where even the smallest creature could alter the course of survival. As the echoes of these first battles ripple through deep time, we are reminded that life's ingenuity is born from struggle and adaptation. For more journeys into Earth's forgotten worlds, subscribe and follow us into the depths of deep time.